Does God command what is right because it is right, or is it right because God commands it? If what is right because God commands it, then it seems that God could command murder, or God could command adultery, or rape, or racism, or God could command us to torture kittens, and it would be right. And that doesn't seem right. But on the other hand, if God commands what is right because it is right, then it seems like there is a standard of morality which God answers to, a standard of morality higher than God. And that doesn't seem right either. So this is naturally one of the interesting questions in philosophy of religion that calls the attention of philosophers and theologians, and has been doing so for many centuries. The question is called the Euthyphro Question because Socrates deals with this question in Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro. Now, in this particular question, in this particular dialogue, the question is raised in a polytheistic context. Not God, not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of the Bible, not the God of the Torah, not the God of the New Testament, not the God of the Quran, but Zeus, Apollo, Ares, and Athena, and so on. The gods of the Greco-Roman pantheon. Do these gods command what is right because it is right, or is it right because the gods command it? That's the nature of the question in Socrates' context. In the Euthyphro dialogue, a clear answer to the question does not really emerge, but there is a definite rejection of the theory that what is right depends on the commands of these gods. Now, in recent philosophical theology, some, such as Eleanor Stump, prefer one side of the question, namely the theory that God does seem to have some sort of obligations, that it is not appropriate to say that what is right solely because God commands it. Others, such as Philip Quinn and Robert Adams, prefer the other side of the question. They endorse what is now called divine command theory, the theory that what is right because God commands it. Now, divine command theory has undergone some interesting developments in recent philosophy of religion, or philosophical theology. Adams and others, such as C. Stephen Evans, argue for a version of divine command theory that is a little bit like a hybrid of both sides of the Euthyphro question. They say that what is right is rooted in God, or depends on God, but that it is rooted in God's character, God's loving character, or God's holy character, or God's perfect character. And so the question suggests something that doesn't really need to be suggested. Let's review the question. Is what is right because God commands it, or does God command it because it's right? If we say it's right because God commands it, then it seems that we have the uncomfortable conclusion that if God were to command us to torture kittens, for example, that would be right. And this is not a comfortable conclusion for most religious people. But if Adams, Evans, and others are correct, then the theory that God could do this is impossible. And the statement, if God would command us to torture kittens, then it would be right to torture kittens, describes an impossibility. It's like saying, if 2 plus 2 equals 5, then it would be right to torture kittens. And so, according to some views in the philosophy of language, according to a view you might see in a logic textbook, it is strictly speaking true. An if-then proposition with a false if clause is true, according to that particular theory, which, again, you will likely find in your logic textbook if you take a basic logic class. However, it's not a truth that should upset us. If God were to command us to torture kittens, and if 2 plus 2 equals 5, then it would be right to torture kittens. But so what? Who cares? Now, this move of linking God's commands to God's perfect character, while also stating that what is right is rooted in God, or even rooted in His commands, or even rooted in His commands which issue from a loving character, or a holy character, or a perfect character, a morally perfect character. This move in philosophical theology links the person making this move to the work of some medieval philosophers, such as Augustine, Aquinas, Boethius, and Anselm. In their theology, in their philosophy, the unity of God ensures that the goodness of God is not separated from anything that God does or anything that God commands. And so it's a very interesting and, in my opinion, a very promising approach to the Euthyphro question.